Going to open this meeting up. Please stand for the pledge. Cecily, roll call, please.
Counselor Augsburger,
Here.
Counselor Bronson. Okay. Counselor Hagee.
Here.
Counselor Richards.
Here.
Counselor Sanchez.
Here.
President Pro Tem Thorstad.
Here.
Mayor Coleman.
Present.
Committee Member Miller. Committee Member Brianna.
Here.
Committee Member Bechtel. Committee Member Gerson.
Present.
Committee Member Olson.
Here.
Committee Member White.
Here.
Great. We have a quorum.
Before we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is election of the chair, I would like to say thank you to all of the citizens for showing up tonight to be here to participate in this process. Thank you for your commitment to the city. So now we will elect a chair for this time that we're together, and we prefer it to be a citizen. So if there's anybody that would like to nominate one of these lovely people to be the chair of these proceedings, please feel free to do so now. So if you're shaking your head, does that mean you don't want somebody to nominate you? Are there any of the citizens who would like to or be willing to have their name nominated? No? No?
Unfortunately, I won't be here tomorrow night, so
Okay. That's good to know. That helps. Yeah, we could have our newest member.
jump on in there.
What is the protocol as far as, Cecily, our laws?
It's perfectly allowed.
It's perfectly allowed. Okay, so we can nominate somebody. So if there's another person that would like to be nominated for the budget committee or nominate somebody else, feel free to do so.
I nominate Chelsea Augsburger.
We have a nomination. Yes.
Is that a motion? Is there a second for the nomination?
I second it.
I heard a second here.
A second. Yep.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to nominate Counselor Augsburger as the budget chair. Cecily, please call for a vote.
Counselor Augsburger? You can abstain. Okay. All right. Counselor Hagee?
Yes.
Counselor Richards?
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Thorstad?
Yes.
Mayor Coleman?
Yes.
Committee Member Miller?
Yes.
Committee Member Brianna?
Yes.
Committee Member Gerson?
Yes.
Committee Member Olson?
Yes.
Committee Member White?
Yes.
Let the record show that's a unanimous that Counselor Augsburger is now the chair of the budget committee. I'm handing things over to you.
You'll find in your packets the budget committee meeting minutes from last year's budget committee meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Nay?
Fine.
And I'm an aye. I just read off the paper. Any abstaining? Motion passes. We will now open the floor for public comment. Tonight. I thought we did. I need a little clarification. I was thinking public comment was after we did all of this. No?
So
Public comment is
we do
tonight.
public comment tonight now, and then tomorrow, again, after we have the presentation, there's another period and a public hearing.
Awesome. All right, we will now open the floor for public comment. Speakers will receive 3 minutes. Please state your full name and address for the record. Comment should be addressed to the chair. If people have signed up to speak, please, excuse me. So public comment is opened at 5:35.
And there's no one
I
registered.
was going to say, hearing none. Now we'll turn it over to staff for the presentation and discussion.
Good evening, Mayor and Council Budget Committee. As you can see on page 3 and 4 is the entire budget message. I'm not going to read through that word for word, but I will summarize it here tonight to get us started. So the proposed fiscal year 26-27 budget totals approximately $43.9 million. It reflects the city's continued commitment to fiscal responsibility, transparency, and implementation of council priorities. The general fund is proposed at $7.84 million, representing a modest increase and maintaining stable operations. Overall, budget growth is primarily driven by capital projects, enterprise fund activity, and infrastructure investments. Council goals this year remain focused on 5 areas: community, infrastructure, essential services, economic strength, and efficient government. This year emphasizes moving key projects forward, including Weddell Bridge restoration, some Quarry Park improvements, Willow Yucca LID, continued work towards the wastewater treatment plant goal, utility and infrastructure investments such as upgrades to the water treatment plant and Canyon Creek pump station support long-term system reliability. Economic development efforts will continue through projects like the Santiam Feed Store Plan and Commercial Exterior Improvement Program, SEEP. The city remains focused on maintaining service levels while investing in long-term sustainability with continued efforts to pursue grant funding to offset major project costs if we can find those. And then I just want to finally make a note that in the police department section of the budget, specifically, there was an error in the FTE count in the budget document. It was listed as 23.22 FTE, but the correct number is actually 24.67 FTE. So with that, I will turn it over to Finance Director Brown.
Thank you, City Manager Ogden. We'll go ahead and get started. So for those that don't know me, my name is Matt Brown. I'm the finance director for the city. So thank you for participating in the budget committee process. As budget committee members, I would like to go through a general overview of the city, just remind the committee of the roles and responsibilities. And as we go through the presentations tonight and tomorrow night, please do not hesitate to raise your hand or shout at me. We want to make sure that we're able to answer all of your questions or any concerns that you may have over the budget document for next year. So please do not hesitate to speak up. So there are 2 main things that the budget committee's purpose is. The first is to ensure that the city is adopting a balanced budget. So that means that our revenues equal our expenses at the end of the day. The second question for the budget committee to answer is that does this budget document and what you see inside, does it represent the goals and the values that the city council and city manager have presented? As city manager Ogden had mentioned the council goals just a few minutes ago, those are the byproducts of what the goals are for creating the budget for next year. So those are the 2 main questions that you're looking to answer over these next 2 days of presentations and any questions that you may have. It is the city's staff's responsibility to first present to you a proposed budget and a balanced proposed budget, which is what you have in front of you. Through the process of the next 2 days, you'll review the document, ask any questions that you have, and then you will approve the document, hopefully, at the end of the next couple days, as well as the property tax rates that will go on for the next year's tax roll. After the budget committee process is done, there's still some more process that it goes into for Oregon budget law. The budget document, once approved by the budget committee, goes to the city council to be officially adopted. That process also contains a public hearing where there's an opportunity for the public to come in again and give any public comment or testimony that they want to do on the budget. And then the city council will vote and hopefully adopt a budget. The deadline to adopt a budget for any city organization is June 30th. So our fiscal year runs from July through June. So technically we have to adopt a budget by 6:30, or on July 1st, the city can legally not actually spend any money. Any questions over that? Okay. You can go to the next slide. So I wanted to give you all a brief overview of some of the funds and what I like to call fund buckets that the city operates in. When we operate as a city, we tend to get revenues in for certain purposes. And when those revenues come in, there are specific rules on what we can and cannot spend those dollars on. And so we separate those out into what we call funds. The general fund is the biggest fund of the city. It's roughly about 18% of the budget next year. It is where we have a lot of our departments like administration, our finance department, our municipal courts, community development. These are normally departments that don't bring in enough revenue to sustain themselves. So we put them into a large bucket. And then the general fund is actually, it's one of the main revenues are your property taxes, as well as franchise fees and a few other things that we're going to talk about in a little bit later. But a lot of these revenues are pooled together in the general fund to help sustain those departments that aren't able to bring in enough revenue to sustain themselves. Some of the other departments that do have their own fund because they can sustain themselves are things like the police, library, and then transportation and enterprise funds. So that moves us to our special revenue funds. Special revenue funds like our police and library specifically. Sweet Home is very lucky to have a local option levy for both of these departments. This helps sustain their operations every single year. When you get property tax money in specifically for the police, specifically for the library, those funds go directly to that department for spending on that department. We can't take the police levy revenue and then help fund a treatment plant or help fund the administration department at City Hall. It has to go to the police.
Wow.
Same thing with the library. Couple other funds in our special revenue. We have a community enhancement fund. We'll go through that tonight and tomorrow. The community enhancement fund is kind of a pool of a lot of mini departments that don't bring in a whole lot of money. So it's not, I guess, the most efficient for them to have their own separate fund. So we combine them into one fund. So these are things like our PATH program, the Weddell Bridge program, the pool donations that we get through utility billing, those types of things. Some of the other funds in special revenue, we're going to talk about the Willa Yucca Fund. Is that right? Willa Yucca? I always question myself on that. And then our transportation fund, which is our street maintenance program. The next group of fund buckets is our system development charges. So these are SDCs abbreviated. System development charges are fees that developers pay when they come in. They technically come in and want to build a house or a development. And they have to pay certain fees for sewer, water, storm, transportation, and parks. And those fees go towards development of that program. And it's essentially a fee to help them pay for their portion of the system. So those system development charges go into a specific fund. They can only be spent on specific things related to those projects. The enterprise funds are water, sewer, and storm. So these are your utility bills that you see every month. The enterprise funds is the one area in a city government where you can sort of operate like a business in itself. So the water, sewer, and storm, they each have fees that you pay as residents in a community. And so those fees go directly into that specific fund. We don't want to take water revenue, spend that on a sewer project. We don't want to take storm revenue, spend that on a water project, those types of things. The other two last funds are our internal service funds, economic development, and our reserve funds. These don't have a lot of money in them, but they've been set up and used historically. And so we're continuing them into the future, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. Are there any questions that I can answer from the committee about that structure?
Question. We can't use police funds or library funds. Is that because they're bond measures?
That is because you are electing a property tax rate to collect money on behalf of for that specific program. So we couldn't take, if you paid your property taxes, we get a certain money that goes to the police department. We couldn't take that money intended for the police department and go spend it on municipal courts or street maintenance, water sewer projects, those types of
Because
things.
it's property tax?
Because you're collecting the tax specifically for a fund. As
So-
a city, we're saying we're going to tax you $1.45 or whatever it is per $1,000, and it's going to go towards the police department. So we've made a promise as a city that we're going to collect that tax and we're going to use it for a specific purpose.
So that's different than property tax. It's a separate tax.
It is still a property tax. It's called a local option levy tax.
I realize that. I know the options.
Okay.
My question is, I know there's a police fund and because we have, I'm sorry,
No, you're fine.
we have the sheriff's department also. So, for instance, on my income, on my taxes for the year, it's $1,000 for the police department, which is here. It's another $350 for the sheriff's department.
Mhm.
So I understand what the sheriff's department is something different. Police department is a bond measure, is it not?
Yes, it is.
And is not, I get confused when I say, well, the
It's
property tax is still
I
part of
wanna-
the bond measure, but not part of the bond measure?
correct. I want to actually go back. It is not technically a bond. It is a local option property tax. A bond would be something for like a capital project that we would go out for if we're going to sell a
Right.
bond to do like a capital project. These are, if it's a bond, if it's technically phrased as a bond, you should not be able to use those funds for operations. As a local option levy, you can tax somebody's property and use those funds for operating. And that's what we're doing to fund the operations of a police department.
And so that particular part can only go to the police department.
Correct.
Still a little hazy on it, but that's okay. We're good.
I'm happy to talk additionally or bring some additional information if you want to jot down a few questions that I can specifically answer for you.
Okay.
And I can bring that back to you tomorrow or email it to you since you won't be here tomorrow.
The only reason I say that is because I think on my taxes, year-end taxes, it says bond measure. It says bond one or bond two or. No,
Could be school district bonds, it could be the fire district bonds.
but we have a police.
You pull your statement and tell you what each one is.
I was going to say
I
that
already know it's
the police and the library levy show up as loc op 1 and loc op 2 on your tax
low
statement.
comp.
Loc op, short for local
Local
option.
option.
Yes.
So options, bonds, different.
Correct.
Yes.
We're good.
Okay. Any other questions that I can answer? Okay. So we will go ahead and jump in. Go to the next slide. So the first fund we're going to talk about is one of our major funds, the general fund. It's pages 18 and 23 in the budget document if you want to look through. On each of these slides, when we go through the funds, we usually give the highlight levels of what the appropriation levels are and how much money we can spend for this year. And then we'll go on the left side and it kind of states some of the major changes. So in our general fund, we'll see that our revenues are actually increasing about 1.5%, which is fairly modest. The department overall expenditures are increasing by about 4%. Mainly that is because of cost of living increases and insurance and retirement increases that we're seeing among the departments there. We do have about $670,000 laid out for potential capital projects. Those are identified here on the slide as the East Wing renovations that we're hoping to do, the City Hall Park, and the Weddell Bridge improvements. Similar to last year, there's a transfer out of the general fund. So the general fund, again, is pooled resources that there are not a lot of restrictions on what we can and cannot do with general fund dollars. So we can take some of those funds and transfer them to other areas within the budget. So that's what we're doing this year. We did this similar this year. We're doing that the same next year where we are transferring money out into our community enhancement fund. So that community enhancement fund, again, is a lot of different smaller departments that don't have a lot of money to operate. But those transfers are noted here. $15,000 to special events, $30,000 to the senior center, $15,000 to the chamber, and then $5,000 for community foundations. Overall, the general fund budget is about $7.8 million, as City Manager Ogden had mentioned during his budget message. Any questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
When did City Hall become a park?
I
We're going to make a park?
So as part of the park system master plan, the green space next door
Mhm.
has been identified as a future park site. And so we've secured a grant to fund some fitness equipment to start that development, but there's a larger plan for trails, potentially a dog park, again, all part of the master plan.
So $300,000 this year for,
To start improvements, including a fitness park. And that's inclusive of the grant funds that we've been awarded.
so that will do what? Like set up a pathway to where you
So basically,
push-ups, sit-ups. and that
Yeah,
kind of
it-
Thing where you go through the whole thing?
exactly.
Okay. Got it.
I can send you
And-
the link later. Yeah.
And East Wing renovations, didn't that go through a few years ago? I mean, where is the East Wing here?
So the East Wing, we have a CSC is renting that out, and they are wanting to bring in workforce development into the community. And so in order to use that space, we need to renovate it because it's just bare bones over there. So we're looking at renovating it just vanilla shell eventually, and maybe depending on what they need in the future, we can build it out more specifically to what they might need.
So are we getting rent from them now?
Yes, we are. Yes,
And so future, hopefully they're going to bring in more people.
correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Question is more directed for staff. How long have we been paying the utilities at the senior center, and is that a part of our lease, or is that just something we've been doing?
We pay them, but I bill them each month. So both the senior center and the Boys and Girls Club then reimburse us. So it should come out pretty much to a zero almost every year as we bill them.
That's the part I wanted to hear. Thank you so much.
I do have one extra question. I thought years ago when we stopped giving money to the chamber, I thought that didn't that change years back? I know they had problems at one time and
Yeah, the city has actually never stopped supporting the visitor center part of the chamber building. But years back, the chamber did have issues, and that's when the city started to have a liaison to watch the finances of the chamber. So city's always done that because it comes from a tourist. You're going to explain that better, right, Director Matt?
it comes from the community enhancement fund. But, yeah.
and so that money comes from the general fund? or-
Correct. So we're taking the money from the general fund,
Right, to
moving
put
it into the
to the
community
chamber.
enhancement, and then that's where we actually cut the
Oh, it
check
goes
from.
into the community. All right.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Any other questions on the general fund? Great. And if you do have any burning questions, if you think throughout the night and want to come tomorrow with questions, you can always bring questions back, even if we've gone over stuff. So please don't hesitate. The next fund we're going to look at is our police fund. So overall revenue is increasing about 2.1%. That's mainly because of property tax increases that we're anticipating. And then department overall increases are about 9.5%. Obviously, most of your police department is in personnel with officers, dispatchers, sergeants, and that type of thing. So their COLA increase, retirements, insurance, those types of things increase every single year. And I believe they just signed recently a new contract.
Yeah, it was last year.
Correct. So taking those into consideration, and then the additions of one FTE, I believe we added.
No, we didn't add any FTE. We
Oh,
just-
that was someone you just recently hired. We
Yes.
talked about that
Yeah.
earlier today.
Yes.
Yep. Sorry. So, overall, the materials and services only went up about $100,000. Was budgeted originally at $920,000 this year. It's going up to $1,050,000. So again, modest increases in materials and services. Most of the increases are in personnel. The police department is budgeting $200,000 for capital outlay improvements to the building. They've had ongoing improvement projects over the last couple of years to help maintain and improve the building facility sites that the police department is on. Other than that, they have a very healthy contingency fund and unappropriated. And I'll remind the committee as what those are. Contingency funds and unappropriated funds are often combined and called reserve funds. Contingency funds are funds that we don't necessarily appropriate or put into a certain line item to spend, but they are available in case of an emergency where the city manager would have to come to the city council and say, hey, something came up, a roof leak or ant problem or something like that, and say, I don't have enough money in my budget. I need to move money into my budget so I can have a little bit more to spend for this particular project. So contingency funds are available for you to use throughout the year through an approval process by the city council. The other types of reserves are unappropriated funds. Unappropriated funds are things that we essentially put into our savings account, and we'd even tell ourselves that we are not going to touch that money. That's a guaranteed rollover of our beginning balance for next year. So those are funds that unless there's actually a order from the governor actually stating a state of emergency, we cannot actually use unappropriated funds. So you'll see contingency and unappropriated funds throughout the budget. Are there any questions that we can answer for the police department?
No, but I need to jump back a sec.
Yeah.
Can I jump back to the general fund?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just on page 19. This is one thing I just didn't understand was the general fund expenditure is finance is 324. And then we go down for total materials and services and we have another 278 for finance. You're taking all the money.
That would
You're doing
be
your
the
finance thing.
324 for the personnel within the finance department.
So we got 324 right under there.
Correct. And then the
And then down the
278
bottom,
is,
278.
and that's, so
Yeah,
we have the
bottom,
personnel.
Total.
That's, so personnel is listed up at the top and
Right.
then materials and services are listed at the bottom.
I
If you-
realize that.
What's that?
I realize that.
Okay.
These two different numbers?
Yes,
two
these are two
different
different
things.
numbers. If you want to look at the entire finance department or any other department as a whole, there actually are broken out on the additional pages. So you can look at the entire department as a whole if you'd like.
I'm just wondering about the finance. What is the
Okay.
finance for those two departments? Those two? You understand what I'm saying? Right here. So we have personal services for 324 and down here we have 278. Services for personnel and total materials and services. So he has finance here and finance here. I'm wondering why there's over $500,000 on finance.
Again, part of that is due to personnel, how many staff we have in here. And then,
What for the personnel? What? Finance for what?
so we have finance director, we have a financial operations manager, and our utility billing are all part of that finance department. Correct,
Yes.
among other things. And then these are okay.
This is just,
all of the supplies they need to operate the department.
that's what I. Actually, pay.
So just to add a little bit more clarification, so you can see for the finance department. So specifically for myself, I am not an employee
Right.
of the district. So my services are paid out of professional services, which would be part of the materials and services.
Correct.
The largest thing of materials and services as well is the audit fees that we do for a city every single year.
Yep.
So those are almost about half of that 278 is within myself, a company that actually does our bank reconciliations called Marine & Company,
Right.
as well as the audit fees.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether you were charging over $500,000, that's all.
Oh, no, I'm
Just didn't realize
definitely
that.
not charging
It
$500,000.
didn't specifically say payroll up there. It said finance. I'm going,
Yeah.
wait a minute. We're good.
Okay. Any other questions on the general fund or police department?
So is the police department fully staffed now?
Yes, it is.
I see that we've had a couple of new ones recently.
Yeah, in fact, we just brought on our last dispatcher today, and then we filled our last officer position, and that person starts May 4th.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
Okay, without any other questions, we'll move on to the library. So library fund is on pages 26 and 27 of the budget document. Roughly about $2.2 million. Overall increases is about 1%, due mainly into the property taxes increase from this current year that we're anticipating. The materials and services are increasing about 10%. Again, a good portion of the library department budget is through personnel. And actually materials and services, if you're looking at the budget on page 27, is actually flat from this current year. Any questions on the library?
So
I'm looking at you.
Is that
But
on?
this is for the council, not for this. You're gonna renovate the old library, or we gonna have a new I haven't been in any meetings lately, so I'm sorry. I haven't been in any meetings lately, so are we upgrading the existing library, or are we gonna do a whole new library?
I'm going to let Director Daisy handle that because there's reasons as to why we're not going to update the current library.
It'll depend on funding that we can find, grants and donations. Currently, our space is about half of what we actually need for the size of city that we are. We have no additional space on the current lot that we're on to expand, and the building is not able to grow up. So we are looking for new spaces. That's one reason we have that large amount in the contingency. That is mostly a donation towards a new building, whether that's renovated or brand new is going to depend. Costs for construction are really high. Renovation would be much easier, but we need at least 10,000 square feet. And that's not available new or used right now.
Well, I remember from years ago, I knew we needed a new library. I just didn't know what you were gonna try to do, because I saw 1 million and then 2.4 coming up in the next few years for the library.
Yeah, the majority of that was a donation towards a new building.
Mhm. I know, good luck. I know.
So I have a question. On the insurance, the adopted last year was 59,000 and now we're looking at 91,000. That's almost a double.
Which line are you looking at?
On the library fund, I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering why the insurance is so high.
So that is the insurance for personnel increases. And again, a budget amount of what we're anticipating. We don't fully know what insurance costs will be, and also the staffing for the library and who will receive insurance and take insurance.
But don't we typically make an estimate based upon historical figures, what we actually paid and what we proposed last year?
We do. In our proposed budget, we have in the past few years actually projected a little bit higher than what insurance rates have actually come in. So at the end, we typically are a little bit more conservative in what we're budgeting to spend, even though we know that insurance may typically not go to that level of increase that we're anticipating.
Okay, it just doesn't sound very conservative to me, almost doubling. Sorry.
I think he means conservative in the sense that we're over budgeting. And I will say too, we received correspondence from our insurer that the market is very volatile and we could expect very large increases in insurance.
Well, I noticed that insurance has increased across the board, but none of them has increased this much. That's my only question.
Also, the majority of our staff are part-time, and they decide each year if they're going to opt in or opt out. And they don't do that until October, so it can be a little difficult to budget for. So I do like the overestimating the amount, just in case all of them suddenly decide we have better insurance than their spouse.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the assumption in the proposed budget would be that everyone opts in for the insurance. Otherwise, if we decide to, guess half or two people are going to do it, we end up potentially overspending that budget line item, then having to come back to city council to ask for additional funds from contingency to move up into insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the library?
Does that mean the second figure for insurance is the insurance on the building?
Correct. That would be general liability insurance. And the general liability insurance, we actually do as an entire city. And then when the bill comes, we parse it out to see how much was actually in the library building or the city hall and end up billing it out that way.
A question, but it's more for Director Daisy. I see that there's an increase in staffing. Is that just some of your part-time people doing more hours?
This year and next year, we're adding our library intern as part of official staff rather than having grants to cover that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. We'll move along to the community enhancement funds. So starting on page 29 and going through 31. Pages 30 and 31 break out all of the kind of little mini departments that we have within this fund. So we have a city general account. We have the PATH program, special events, public transit, which is a pass-through grant that we receive, general park donations, the Weddell Bridge, and the pool program, which are donations that we get through utility billing. Overall, we budget about $1.3 million for this fund. Happy to answer any questions specifically about any of the programs or services that are within here.
I know we never use the PATH program, but what is the PATH program? Good question, Bob.
I will
Jump in.
Back in Pat's day, they used it a lot for street kind of improvements
We should
or
do that.
grant matches for the ODOT stuff. Like I know we have that Mountain View project. A lot of times that PATH program was used to match the grants when you have to have a grant match.
Okay, so it's kind of unappropriated contingency reserve money kind of stuff.
Right. To use for a
Correct.
match, yeah. Because when you get
Pretty
a
much.
grant, you have to have that match, and a lot of times that's what that was used for.
So when you're looking for a grant to back up that money,
And we have one with ODOT that's potentially coming up to get improved Mountain View Road sidewalks stuff for kids walking to school.
So in the past and in this budget, you'll see that majority of that PATH program funds are sitting in a contingency account.
right?
So we have to would go back to the city council to say, hey, we got this grant
We
for
got
the
this
street
grant, so
project.
we
We'd like
can
to use
use-
PATH programs and
Can we have this little bit of this money to do this?
Correct.
Gotcha.
I have a question. So on the parks, it says that the proposed is $70,000. Is that in additional to the 300,000 that we're putting in from from the general fund?
so these monies could be used for city hall projects unless they were dedicated specifically for a different purpose. I don't recall if these specific funds were general park donations or if they were specific purposes.
I don't think it was specific
Okay.
purpose. Yeah.
So then these funds would be appropriated for use for potentially that park or any other park within the city.
And the additional 5,000 for Weddell Bridge then brings the total for Weddell Bridge for this year to 75,000? Is that what we're saying?
You could,
General fund says 70,000. Am I correct?
correct.
And now we're
the
putting an
capital
additional
project.
5,000 from this fund,
Yes.
so it's 75,000 into the Weddell Bridge for this year. Is that right?
Correct. And you could
Okay.
potentially use PATH program funds for some of the Weddell Bridge as well.
Okay, thank you.
I'm curious why we have a line for pool, but it's been zero. Is that for the community pool? Is it a placeholder or?
There is a donation they can make through their utility bill that goes to the pool. And then every June, I run a report and send those funds to the school district for the pool.
Thank you.
We never know exactly how much money we're going to get, but we have to appropriate something so that we can have an expense in that line item. Any other questions on the Community Enhancement Fund? Okay, we will continue moving forward to the Willa Yucca LID Fund. Okay. So for those that are not aware, this LID fund, Local Improvement District is what that stands for, LID. And this was set up a couple years ago in anticipation for an improvement project that the city is in the middle of engineering, I believe, and finalizing those plans and financing for that local improvement district. Right now, the city a couple years ago fed this fund a couple $100,000 to get started. And so we've used those funds for professional services, for engineering and cost estimates, those types of things. It still has about $157,000 left in that fund that we've appropriated to use again in professional services to continue engineering plans. When those plans are finalized and the city decides that if they want to move forward with that project, we would go out for a loan for that capital project improvement. That would be part of a local improvement district that is paid back by the residents of that local improvement district area. Those are usually paid over a period of time in which the city would bill out those residents in that area for those local improvements to get back the money that was spent.
Where is that area?
That area is going to be, if you are north of Main Street, headed down 18th Avenue, and then you have Tamarack down there that runs east and west. If you go north past Tamarack, it is that area down there. Behind the old, yeah.
Behind the old mill. Gotcha. Which will lead me into another question later.
Any other questions on the Willa Yucca LID fund? Okay.
I was, excuse me, I was under the impression that there was a developer who was going to put some money into that.
That is,
The homeowners, a person who owned property in that Willow Yucca was going to help with the cost of developing that.
that's not something that I'm aware of. I know that there is a property owner down there that owns a majority of the properties, and maybe that's what you're referring
That
to.
must be what I'm thinking
That's
of.
what she's referring to. And years ago, we went through a project with him. He was trying to get the city to pay for the water part, I believe, for the water going down there. And it never happened, I don't think. Susan?
I think
Remember-
that's the lid, is that the community themselves decided that they wanted to move forward with that,
Correct.
as far as they had enough people interested in putting that burden on their personal property, and the city voted to say, yes, you can go ahead and move forward with the lid. So, which means when the development happens, it actually is charged
Will go
to
to
them
them.
as homeowners. There are some obligations that the city is committed to, but for the most part, most of it comes from those local homeowners, because that property, would be improving their property.
Madam Chair, if I may, one detail that I just want to make sure I mention so that more people remember it and not just me, because I'm not involved anymore. But when the LID was first formed and all the discussions for funding it were had at that time, the property owner you're referring to that owns a large number of the properties said on record that he did not want any city assistance to go to his portion of the LID. And so there was discussion among the council at the time of what amount the city would put in to help with the LID. And essentially what that property owner said is spread that money among the rest of the properties and not the properties that he owned. And so that may be what contribution might have been alluded to earlier.
Thank you for adding that clarification. Yes.
When we talk development of that area, like what specifically do we mean by that though?
Getting water lines.
So
from
we're
there.
we're still working through the scope of it, but at this point it is addition of water lines, sidewalks, street improvements, and there is some storm and sewer work within the scope we're currently working with.
Yeah, they already have sewer in that neighborhood, and this was started out to add water, but then also streets and sidewalks.
Yeah, it's not to add sewer, it's to improve some of the sewer in the area.
They don't have any.
So just to clarify, in layman's terms, when people built their homes down there, they didn't want to hook up to city water, so they have wells down there. The wells have incurred struggles, so now they're choosing to hook up to city water. Also, they don't have fire hydrants down there, which was one of the tipping points for most of us counselors to vote to approve the lid so that they can get hydrants down there. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions before moving on? Okay. So next fund to discuss is the transportation fund on page 33 of your budget document. So about $1.7 million in total for this fund. The revenues are increasing roughly about 2%. The main source of revenue for the transportation fund is the state gas tax and the revenue sharing that the city receives from that gas tax. It does receive a small amount of interest and miscellaneous revenue, as you can see on the budget document. We want to note here, again, I talked about this at our last budget committee meeting last year, but I just want to caution as we move into the future for the transportation fund. We do have some capital improvement projects that are identified in our capital improvement plan that are street improvements, and those improvements are fairly expensive to do. Right now in the operations of the transportation fund, the city does not have the funding available to do those projects unless they are really fully grant funded. So as we move forward, we talked about, I mentioned this last year, is that over the long term, the city will need to have a conversation about how it funds transportation. And that can be meaning that we look at the staffing that is appropriated to these funds, as well as the materials and services and the capital projects. You'll notice that for next year and this current year, only about $100,000 is allocated for capital projects. And that is not much of improvements that you could do with $100,000 in this day and age. So as we look at continued cost increases in materials and services and personnel, this is an area where the city will have to think on some long-term solutions on what that may look like. There are many cities that choose to have either a local option specifically for transportation. There are some cities that choose to have a fee put on utility bills to pay for transportation, specifically and improvement related costs like that. But that may be something that the city may need to look at into the future if it cannot obtain grants to do capital projects. So nothing that a decision or that needs to happen tomorrow or the next day or anything, but something just to think about as you move into the future. Are there any questions that we can answer about the transportation fund? Nothing?
Nope.
No. You're saving it. I can
I'm
see.
good.
Okay, we will move forward to system development charges. So, as I mentioned before, system development charges are fees that are typically paid by a developer that consist of water, sewer, storm, transportation, and parks. These fees are typically updated every few years with what we call SDC master plans and studies to identify and make sure that the appropriate charges for each of those areas are appropriate for the development and the capital improvement projects that are identified. So overall, the SDC funds are appropriated about $4.4 million. You'll see that a large portion of each of the SDC fees are mainly in unappropriated and contingency dollars. Main reason for that is because we do not have a lot of projects identified in our capital improvement plan that are SDC eligible. So to be an SDC eligible project, the SDC fees can only pay for the growth of that improvement. So let's say you have a 6-inch sewer line going down your main street and you need to replace it. There's been some development in the area and just needs to be bigger. SDC fees cannot pay for the 6-inch pipe, but what they can pay for is an 8-inch pipe, and they can pay for the difference in cost between the 6 and 8-inch. So SD fees can pay for those improvements of capacity increases, but not the actual replacement of the pipe. So it gets a little tricky when we talk about capital improvement projects that we can't just replace a pipe specifically with the same pipe that goes in. It needs to be an increase in capacity to be SDC eligible. So identifying projects and the specific cost of those increases can be a little bit tricky to figure out. So we have a lot sitting in contingency and unappropriated because we just don't have projects available in the city that are SDC eligible. Any questions about SDCs that we can answer? Okay. Moving on to the water fund. So water fund sitting at about $6.5 million budgeted for this year, mainly has 2 departments within the water fund, the plant and then the water distribution. Overall revenues are anticipated to increase about 11% compared to this past year. That's mainly due to an increase in the beginning fund balance. You'll see that the revenue and the sales line item for that particular, for the water fund on page 37 are staying pretty static with what we have. I'm not anticipating recommending any increases in the water fees for this next year. The fund is healthy. The capital improvement plan projects are identified up to the next 5 years, and the fund appears healthy enough to be able to maintain cash to pay for those projects over the next few years. So I'm not anticipating any rate increases in this next year. What do you got?
Final down the bottom, capital outlay,
Yes,
1,000,006.
1,000,006. So if you go back to the capital improvement list, which is on page
Back to the front.
16. So page 16, you'll see 3 projects that have been identified. You have 1.2 million that is estimated for a treatment plant generator, $60,000 for pump replacements, and $350,000 specifically for a Canyon Creek pump station.
Oh, it needs it. No problem with that. Just wondering where it's going. I missed that.
No worries. Any other questions on the water fund?
So all of the problems with the water caused by the lake draining, those have all been taken care of?
That I cannot specifically speak to.
That is seasonal. So when the drawdown happens, it all depends on a number of things. The turbidity or the dirt that's stirred up in the water. It can, a rain event that's occurring during the same time of the drawdown can make it worse one year and may not be as bad the next year. So, but we do have a system in place to take that turbidity out as much as we can, for sure.
Any other questions on the water fund? Hearing none, we'll move forward to the sewer fund. Next couple pages, 39 and 40. 39 is the summary, with 40 being the details of the 2 departments that are within the sewer fund, which is the plant and sewer collection. So overall, 6% increase in revenue. Again, that's mainly due to the beginning fund balance from the previous years. Sales are showing a flat amount. I'm not anticipating going to the city council and recommending any rate increases for the sewer fund. I will caution the budget committee and city council that obviously we have a treatment plant project that's coming up. And once our audits are finalized and we're able to finalize the loan projections for that project and the funding that will be needed to pay for that treatment plant, that will impact rates pretty heavily. And so that's something to keep in mind and keep talking with the community about to make sure that they are informed as best as possible for when that project does start to happen.
I just want to say, if anybody's not toured the wastewater facility to see why we need improvements, feel free to contact City Hall to check it out. It has not had a major upgrade since 1979, and it shows.
It does.
Chair Augsburger, may I? Are we going to have the audits done by the end of the year? There's 3 of them that we're waiting for, I think I saw.
Yeah, we're waiting for 24, 25, and then 26 currently. So we just finished our 24 ones. We're waiting financial statements from our auditors. I'm hoping to get those in the next week, 2 weeks or so. I keep pressing them, but we have completed all of the requests for information for that audit. So once we get those financial statements done, we'll present them to the city council, and then as soon as that's approved, then we jump right into 25. So if you think about the time frame when we started the 24 budget, it's actually only been about 4 months now since we started, because we ended right at, I believe, the end of the calendar year for the 23. And that was a larger one because that was right as Cindy and myself came in to taking over the finances and cleaning up a lot of the things from the past. So now that we have a little bit more understanding of fiscal year 24, that was the first full year that Cindy and I were a part of and had control over the finances to manage. And so we understood a lot more of what the auditors were asking for, as well as knowing where that information was and how to gather the information that the auditors needed. So definitely a lot faster process in 24 than it was in 23. I would anticipate that again in 25 and 26.
Hopefully a lot faster. And you said that was about 4 months. So 12 months for all 3 to be done, sounds like. Hopefully less, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And just a reminder, we're currently in the fiscal year 26. So typically a normal time frame, you would end the fiscal year at the end of June. Your audits are done by the end of the calendar year. So if I reach that goal of getting your 26 done by the end of December, that would be my goal to get you officially back on full schedule for your audits every year. Yeah, that's Cindy as well. So I'm not going to take any and all the credit, and also these 2 for scrounging up information that we need across the district, the city. So
Thank you.
I have a question.
yeah.
So I noticed that we have no unappropriated funds in this category and a huge contingency fund.
Yes.
So would you explain that difference to me, please?
Yeah, the main reason for that is basically the sewer treatment plants. We know that we have a big project coming up. There are some things that we can do ahead of time with the cash that we have available, but whether we decide to do that, it was not determined when we were putting the budget together that was a decision to be made at this time. So we put it into contingency. So again, like contingency funds, we have to go back to the city council to appropriate those funds. So if we decide that there are some certain projects that we can do before the big loan project and funding, that may be an option to do and spend some of the dollars that we have now instead of using loan dollars and paying interest.
Easier to get to.
Yes.
The our city going above 10,000 population put us into another level federally. Has that had a big impact on any of these departments?
Not
Not really
really.
going over 10,000 other than any possible requirements for the treatment plant.
It impacts our stormwater requirements. That's the biggest impact, and we'll get to that fund soon.
I'll say too, there are some more intense reporting requirements. We're doing our best to handle those in-house, but there are some that require professional services costs through engineers. So there's a small impact there.
Okay.
Any other questions for the sewer fund? Okay, we will jump ahead to the storm fund. So storm fund is fairly small. It's under $1 million, $915,000. Increasing revenues about 2%. Again, similar to water and sewer, mainly due to the beginning fund balance increasing. You'll see that the sales revenue in the adopted budget versus what is proposed for next year is the same. However, I'm going to go into the next couple slides here about some rate increases that potentially we'd like to get your opinion on. So again, expenses decreasing a little bit, or I'm sorry, increasing from $77,000 to $80,000, and then personnel decreasing. When we see rate decreasing and increasing between water, sewer, and storm, obviously we have a number of staff people that work in all three of these areas, as well as transportation, so our public works department in general. So we do our best at the beginning of each fiscal year to look at each person and how much time are actually allocated to each person. How much does this person spend doing transportation projects or doing sewer projects? There are some staff that are fully 100% in the water fund or the sewer fund, but we have a lot of employees that split their departments between those two. So that's why you see a lot of fluctuations, because we're updating it every year based on personnel. So you'll see fluctuations year to year in personnel and some of those costs. And that's what you're seeing here with the storm fund going from $250 to $240 to $154,000. Any questions?
Of course. So I know that there's $600,000 that's capital outlay.
Yep.
And I know it's for Long Street. What does 1G mean? Is that like from 1 to what?
Yeah, so in the storm master plan, the engineers who prepared that, they broke things into priority categories. So the 1 projects are the top tier priority, and then it's just an alphabetical order from there within the category. So it's 1 just means top priority rank, and then A through however many.
So G is kind of farther down than A, which is the most.
Correct.
This is the 15th through the 18th.
So one thing before I jump into the next few slides of going through kind of a rate study for specifically the storm fund here is to make sure that you identify and see that the contingency amount for the storm fund is $81,000. Typically for an enterprise fund, which is your water, sewer, and your storm, we try to have as best practice 3 months of reserves in every fund. That's typical standard practice and best practices for how much money you need to have on hand just in case emergencies happen and you're not going to get any revenue for the year. You need to have at least 3 months of operating expenses to kind of get you going until you figure things out. So that's what we've tried to do within most of our funds. We're unable to do that this year in our storm fund. So I want to jump to the next couple slides here and talk about the stormwater specifically. You can go to the next slide, please. So currently the City of Sweet Home has a stormwater fee of $4 per month. As you can see from some of the comparables that we use, City of Lebanon, Albany, Silverton, and Staten, City of Sweet Home is currently the lowest of those comparables. You can jump to the next slide. Through the stormwater master plan that was mentioned just a few minutes ago, and you had mentioned the $600,000 that we identified for Long Street. So that's identified to be done this next fiscal year within the cash that we have in the fund. When we look long-term at the next couple of projects that are identified in the project, so Long Street from 35 to 39th and Elm Street, that's a fair amount of money for those projects that we do not have cash available to do. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to explain this graph, and it's much simpler than it looks in the chart. So your red line there are expenditures. Your green line is revenue. The blue bars that you see are your ending fund balance at the end, or beginning fund balance at the beginning of that year. So that's how much money you're rolling into next year. The yellow line, the dotted yellow line, is your typical reserve policy. So we try and have, again, 3 months of reserves into that year. When we look at maintaining a $4 per month rate, You can see that we can do that first project of $600,000. But when we get into the future of those next couple projects and you see those bars go below the zero line in those last 2 years, that means our fund balance goes negative. Legally, we can't do that as a government organization. So you will not have money to do those next 2 projects. And so the question that I have to ask is, if you were to want cash to be able to do that project, how much of a rate increase would you need to do to satisfy those 2 projects? So if you go to the next graph, this is showing what would happen if you were to increase the rate from $4 to $5 per month and starting that fee around July 1st of this next year, so in a few months, and then 1 year later, increasing it $1 more to $6. That $2 increase over 2 years would give you the cash available to be able to do those projects. If you go to the next slide, if you were to take the current rate structure for your neighboring cities, again, Lebanon, Albany, Silverton, Staten, if they even stayed the same and we increased $1, you would still be the lowest comparable city. Now, we know that for almost every city, utility rates go up almost every year. It's just like your garbage bill. It's just like your Comcast bill. The reason those rates go up every single year is because there's continuing cost increases for operations. Just like any other business that you have for your utilities, for your Comcast, for your garbage bills, those types of things, the city has those bills as well. And so we have to increase our revenue to ensure that we're keeping up with the expenditures of operating a storm fund. So if you go to the next slide, this is my question to you as a budget committee, is would you recommend that the city council discuss potentially increasing the storm rate in July $1? Is that something that you think the city council should discuss and take up? Any thoughts or opinions?
Yeah, they probably should bring it up. I mean, if the projects are that necessary to go forward, I mean, they only have G and M on here. There has to be A, B, C, D, and E that are more important, I would imagine.
There
So-
are more projects identified, just not within the next 5-year plan.
Okay, but still, within 5 years. Within 5 years, even if it goes up 1, 2, then you're still gonna have a little bit of money to go into those projects in the future years,
Mhm.
correct?
Correct.
I would recommend it.
A $1 a month increase would not be a major burden. If we wait a couple of years and then have to raise it $4 a month, it's going to be a difference.
Correct. And you mentioned a very good point of raising rates before you need the money. And just like anything, it accumulates over years, and being able to raise those rates early before those projects takes place means you have that rolling bucket that keeps growing so that you're able to have cash available like we do for the $600,000 project that's going to happen this next year.
I think your proposal of $1 this year and $1 following year would work, I think. Should bring it to the council anyway. Have them decide.
Any other thoughts or comments to share?
I could go along with that.
I guess my question is, we always seem to raise the rates, we never seem to lower them.
Mhm.
But, I mean, I recognize that projects are expensive. I do question doing Long Street between 15th and 18th at 600,000. I realize that I don't know the particulars about why that particular place was chosen to do the first project, but The second project between 34th and 38th definitely needs to be done. That's always flooded, and I've never seen flooding on 15th to 18th. So that's just a question I have as to why that was chosen, and I don't know the particulars, and I'm sure that Greg knows what he's doing, but I know we've wrestled with this before. The council wrestles with it every year as to whether we should raise rates. I agree that $1 a month is not a big deal right now for most of us. And then another $1 a month? No, but then is it another $1 a month? And is it another $1 a month? So I think we need to consider what we're really starting here.
Any other thoughts, opinions, concerns?
Chair Oxberger, may I? I just want to remind people prior to this increase discussion, we just heard that our water bill and our wastewater bill is going to have to go up significantly when we have this project that we have to pay for. So I want people to keep that in mind too when they're talking about raising more fees.
We didn't bring that into account.
Oh, that was the sewer fund that we talked about just a few minutes ago. So when the project does begin to build a new treatment plant and the funding is identified, this will likely be a loan that the city will have to take because we don't have the cash available to build a new treatment plant. So when that funding is finalized, that would be something that would potentially be listed on a sewer bill, part of your utility bill, but the sewer portion.
But this is what happens when you don't do any improvements for 50 years.
That is very true.
Well, what happened was basically what happened. I'm going to probably go back 10 years, 8 years. We initially wanted to start to do the sewer, to do the project, right? So we had $28 million. We got a grant for $6 million, I believe. So we were down to $22 million to do the project. Then all of a sudden, something, I don't know what the hell happened. All of a sudden, it just went kablooey. And before we knew it, it was $45 million or $48 million. So now it's almost impossible. This day and age, with the prices the way they are for labor and parts and everything, it's astronomical, astronomical. I remember when we first looked at it, Harrisburg did one, I think it was just 6 months before we had proposed to do it here. And they did theirs cheaply for $11 million at the time. But this is 8 years ago. It's a long time ago. But now it's 45, 48 million. What is what's the count? When I came in last year, they told me it was 45. What is it this year?
Well, I think it was a couple of years ago that we looked into this loan, and I think the estimate at that time was like 63 million, and that was a couple of years ago.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it's expensive.
So this is why I've been trying to get the audits done. All of us have been trying to get the audits done. I'm so thankful for the financial team to get us to that point, but it's continuing to skyrocket the costs. So once we get the audits done, then we're going to know the true cost of the project. And I can imagine it's probably doubled since a couple of years ago. So when he said we're going to have significant increases, they are going to be significant if we're going to cover that. So just be mindful.
Well, no offense, our water hasn't been the best either in the past 3 years. So, I mean, that's no, I have already I've toured the sewer plant. I know what it's like. And every now and then it's just too much chlorine. You can smell it. I mean, it comes out of everywhere. And I understand it has to be done. It should have been done 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But, you know, late to the show, you got to pay. And I don't know how much you can push onto the city residents for water, storm, and all of these projects anymore, considering Lynn County is number 2 in taxes in the state. I don't know how easy it is to live in county. I mean, as we all know, our streets are horrible. I mean, they're just not right. And we don't have enough money to get any transportation money. So I don't know how significant are you talking about raising the water rate? You can't, I don't think you can burden the residents that much. I don't know. Without having people go back to the years where people weren't paying their water bill and they were getting shut off. And then that happened a lot years back. I can't remember what years those were, but I don't know. What significant are we talking about? You don't have a number yet?
Yeah, without knowing, again, finalizing the audits so that we can turn in to identify what bond kind of rating the city would get. We have to have updated financials to do that. And then once we have that, then the bond rating will identify what the interest rate would be for the loan. And then, as you mentioned yourself, the longer we wait, the longer you push off, the more expensive the project gets, just as you've noted and everybody else knows, time and money.
What is our bond rating right now?
I don't believe have gotten a bond rating in several years. It's been quite a while. Yeah,
No.
I'm not familiar to know what the current bond rating is.
Do we have any idea if we were to use whatever the last number, however many million it was, what then that would increase the bills if we were to use, I mean, just for an idea of significant, what, because that's so vague. And if we can't, I understand. I just,
I've done an estimate.
is that something we can share? If not, I understand.
It's something I probably would not share.
Apologies for asking. I just,
No, but
significant
I
is
think
different.
There's obviously a larger discussion that has to happen as far as
Sure.
the funding and interest rates, and interest rates can play a very
Yeah.
big part of what that rate structure will look like. What I would recommend to be best is perhaps at a future city council meeting or work session that I can come and give you some idea so that you can start talking about those discussions in the community so that it doesn't come up of, oh, we got the audits done, we got the project done. 3 months later, we're getting going on the project, and now your rate increases are going to be X high.
Right.
Obviously, we don't want that. So it might be best to start that discussion early so that people get a little more familiar with it. Again, I can give you a range, but until we finalize more of the details, it really would be just a range.
I appreciate that. I'm just, as you said, start the discussion so we're transparent. So we have an idea of what significant when we know. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I? Sweet Home has a history of doing nothing for long periods of time and then doing major increases. The way life is everything goes up every single year, 3%. I mean, you get pay increases at work. I mean, I'm tired of it, but I'm just saying, we don't do anything and then we do a whole bunch. And I just think a little bit here, a little bit there, it's less painful.
Whenever I'm asked to do rate studies for other cities, and even when I came back here 2 or 3 years ago to do rate studies when I first got here, my recommendation then and my recommendation will always be to any city is slow, moderate increases every single year. And as painful as that sounds, your garbage bill goes up, your Comcast bill goes up. It's hard to take as a city council and adopt those fee structures, but it is necessary to continue. To your point of, if you were to have raised rate increases 3 years ago and done 2-3% every single year, the amount of money that would accumulate not only in just the actual amount of dollars, but the interest that goes along with it through the investments that we do would have garnered more funds to have available towards this project than the decision that was made to not do rate increases a few years ago.
Madam Chair. And unfortunately, it's sewer. So it's not like something we can just go, hey, let's kick this can down the road again. It's already been kicked down the road since 1979. And unfortunately, because we have delayed in making small, moderate increases, it's massive. And it has to land on the community. And there's only 10,000 of us for it to land on. So.
Yeah, if you're not good friends with your legislatures, I would start making those phone calls because every single dollar can help. And even if it's $500,000 or $1 million, or to the extent that your Oregon legislature and your representatives that help represent this community in positions like yours and further up, start making those phone calls because it will help.
Do we have any idea how much we paid in fines last year?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but that we can probably look into that and find out for you.
I thought that Director Springman last night said that we have not had a DEQ violation for 23 months. Is that correct?
Yes, but we're always kind of catching up. So the project that's going on in Sankey Park, that was partially paid in cash. I want to say maybe around 10 or 12,000. And then the project served as the remainder of our contribution towards that fine. So that has been resolved. And then this year, I think we just paid off 16,000. So we're current with DEQ.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward. There's about 2 more slides till the end of the night. The first one is our Economic Development Fund. Again, a very small fund that, again, historically has been used to capture and receive grants that are to be used for economic development within the city. Right now, that fund has about $40,000 earmarked into it for next year's budget. Again, grants and resources for the community for economic development opportunities. Any questions on this fund?
Could you explain what miscellaneous income might be? You have miscellaneous at 23,000, and I'm not sure what miscellaneous income would be.
Madam Chair, I think I know. Is this the EV charging revenue?
Phone's not working. That and the rent from the Flex building is going into that fund as well.
Yep.
That's the revenue.
Okay. Thank you.
Correct. Yep. Any other questions on economic development? Okay, moving forward to the last slide for the evening is our reserve fund. So this is a fund that the city has had for a number of years. In coming into the city when I did 22, I think, I can't remember now, 22, 23, somewhere right in there. Obviously, we had to go through a few years of getting everything cleaned up. We're getting back on track on our audits. The reserve fund is a fund that we have typically not touched because we're not 100% sure how much funds are actually in there. We know how much is within our budget, but when we get the actuals of our audit, the reserve fund updates every single year a little bit. And so we haven't done anything with our reserve fund in this year or last year because we're waiting for our audits to get up to date. Right now on the books, it looks like the reserve fund does have about $673,000 in it. I am not 100% confident in that number until our audits get up to date and completed. When those get up to date and completed, then the city council and city manager can have a discussion on what those reserve funds should be used for in the future. That could go towards another project. It could go towards the treatment plant, could go towards anything like that. But these are funds that are not earmarked for anything specific in the city that we know of at this time. So again, waiting for the audits to get completed for the end of the year. Right now it's sitting in contingency. Again, so it's available if it had to be. But again, not something that we're appropriating for any use specifically in this next year.
Is it in an account bearing interest?
Yes, it is. Okay, so the next few slides we're not going to get into tonight. What's remaining for the budget committee is that tomorrow night we will open a public hearing, and that is to hear any opinions and thoughts on our state shared revenue. State shared revenue is revenue items that are received right now in the general fund. So these are things like OLCC taxes, marijuana taxes, general revenue sharing from the state, cigarette tax, those types of things. Those are called shared revenues from the state of Oregon. So we have to hold a public hearing to ensure that you have the option for your public to share their concerns or thoughts on how those specific dollars should be spent. That will happen tomorrow, as well as hopefully the approval of the budget document. So we have motions already written out for you to copy, so you don't have to, you can basically just read the slide of the dollar amount and tax rates to help you along the process. But to close out tonight, I want to make sure that there's no questions over anything that we've gone over, or if there's anything that you feel that you need us to present for you tomorrow to help you approve the budget.
Chair Augsburger, may I? Is there any way to follow up with Brianna's question about interest-bearing accounts? And do you have a dollar amount that the city has earned from those, or a percentage that we're at on those?
Yeah, I can pull that for you for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. For just general knowledge without having a specific dollar in mind, if you were to look at the general fund, there is a particular line item on page 18 towards the bottom, interest. It's about budgeted at $700,000 this year. We actually receive all of our interest revenue into the general fund first, and then at the end of the calendar year, we actually disperse it out to the other funds depending on the portion and how large that fund is. So each fund receives a portion of interest based on the size of the account. But that's typically what we receive in a fiscal year. $750,000 is what we're estimating this year. Again, we try and be a little conservative on revenue as well as on the expense side. Interest rates are still pretty decent in the market right now, so still bearing a pretty good interest rate on some of our investments.
I have two questions and an answer. Is there any way to get all of them, like the police department and the library, all into the general fund? Is that possible?
You could. There's nothing illegal to tell you that you couldn't do that. Many cities often have their police and library in the general fund because not a lot of cities have local option levies to specifically pay for it. The reason the city of Sweet Home has it broken out specifically is to ensure that we can show transparency to the public that those dollars that we collect for the library and for the police go 100% to the police and the library. If you put the police and library into the general fund, it gets commingled with all of the other general funds and all the other departments. So the transparency idea of being able to tell your community that that local option goes specifically for this and nothing else. That's why they're broken out.
And secondly, I won't be here tomorrow evening, so I approve the budget. So,
thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question, and I'm going to look to former counselors. I thought we weren't, that we're required to go out for a local option levy for our, because of a tax law that was passed in 1995 that pigeonholed Sweet Home into where we cannot use our general fund for our police and our library. And City Attorney Larson is nodding his head back there.
So if we chose not to go out for the levy or the levy failed, yes, we would have the option to absorb library and police services into the general fund. However, the property tax rate the base rate that supports the fund, that we cannot modify. So we couldn't raise rates to absorb those costs. So essentially those would cannibalize what's currently in the general fund. So we would have to make some decisions about what to cut.
Because there's a limit to what we are, we cannot raise the rate of our taxes. And the limit that we're at is like 1.4, whatever.
Yeah, the permanent rate.
Yes.
Yeah, it's our permanent rate. So actually would not be able to fund our police department nor our library.
Or we could cut parks, or
parks.
et cetera. That would be the discussion we'd have to have.
But we still wouldn't be able to fund PD because it's almost the same prices.
We would reduce services dramatically.
Did I miss anything there?
No, you covered it. We have a permanent rate for our general fund that we cannot change.
And I will note that your police local option levy is considerably higher than your permanent tax rate.
Yes, it is.
So in your general fund, you bring in about $880,000 from your permanent rate. In the police department alone, the property taxes bring in about $4.5 million. So having to move the police into the general fund would not work.
It would not work. Yeah.
Any other discussion? All right. And staff have anything else? No. All right. Meeting's adjourned at 7:01.